I'm at Culloden. This is a battlefield that really marks the end of Scotland as an independent nation, really. It already had been joined with England in 1707, but there were hopes that Scotland would once again be free, and the Jacobite rebellion was staged to try to put Bonnie Prince Charlie on the Scottish throne. It ultimately failed for a variety of reasons. I'm going to try to get under a tree here to reduce the amount of rain. It failed for a variety of reasons, not the least of which was the fact that the Jacobites, the Scottish rebel troops really, were very poorly prepared and poorly equipped to take on British regulars. And the Duke of Cumberland's forces met the Scots here on the 16th of April in 1746. And in that battle, only a few dozen British were killed, but over 1,000 Jacobites were killed. I'm trying not to say Scotsmen, because there were actually Scotsmen on both sides of this conflict. There were Catholic and Protestant Scotsmen fighting on the British side with the King's army, the Duke of Cumberland's army, and there were Protestant Episcopalians as well as Roman Catholics fighting on the Jacobite side. There were other troops as well. There were Irish, there were some French troops, possibly some German troops, because the king at the time, George II, was from the Hanover dynasty, and he was actually German. His dad, he may even have been born in Germany, certainly his father was. So Culloden was not just the Scots against the English. It was people who wanted Scotland to be free of English rule against those who did not. And there were Scots on both sides. And there were actually English on both sides as well. There were some rebels from northern England who were part of the Jacobite forces here at the Battle of Culloden. It's just an empty moor now. There are some stones all around representing the various names of the clans. I'm going to visit those along the path here shortly. And there's also the main monument, which is back there, maybe not even easily viewed. Behind me is the stone cottage that has stood in some fashion since the 1700s, and it really is very much a trademark of Culloden today. It's a very reverent place, so I'm not wearing my hat. Although it is raining, I will go with a bald head. I'm also filming this, interestingly, on the 5th of June in 2019, and that's the day before the 75th anniversary of D-Day, which is being celebrated in Portsmouth, England today, and of course over in Normandy, France tomorrow, as world leaders and dignitaries from all over mark the occasion of the 75th anniversary of the storming of the beaches and the attempt to take Europe back from Nazi occupation. Here in Culloden, it was the last battle, pitched battle actually, fought on British soil. And the purpose of D-Day was to take the battle to the Germans on the continent of Europe, rather than wait for the Germans to pop over here and start to continue the war on British soil. So thankfully, due to the success of D-Day, Culloden remains the last place in Britain where there was an actual battle for the future of the country. So I don't know how that connects all that well with D-Day, but I think it connects a little bit. So I'm going to take my little tour around Culloden and take you with me. have MacDonald ancestors, and that doesn't give me claim to any of the glorious history of the Clan MacDonald or Clan Donald. But one of my ancestors, Alexander MacDonald, served in the British Army in the 1760s and 1770s in North America, and eventually spent the last years of service in Halifax before getting a land grant and staying in New Brunswick. If any of my ancestor MacDonalds were involved in the Battle of Culloden, it was probably on the wrong side because of their affiliation with the British Army, at least the ones I know about. I have several MacDonalds that creep into the family tree from various places, and most of them I don't know much about. So I'm going to have to do some more research. But I noticed back here a little ways, there was the name Price. And I believe that was affiliated with the British side. And of course that's Janice's maiden name is Price. She's a Price, which is really a Welsh name way back. So I don't know which particular Price commander or regiment was here, but I'm going to try to find that out too. And now we're off to the main monument. Here, very close to the memorial itself, are several stones. There's one for the Macintoshes, one for the McGillivrays, and others. This particular stone says mixed clans, and there's a spray of flowers placed at the stone. This is every bit a graveyard, just like a regular cemetery would be. There are bodies buried here that have never been dug up and never will be. So these two stones, there's one coming up just behind me now, also says mixed clans. And I guess some clans were big and some were small. And mixed clans, I guess, would be comprised of all those people who didn't have a solid clan foundation, but maybe fought alongside their fellow clans or affiliated clans. I'll continue to walk around, but first I'll circle the actual monument here, and I'll turn the camera toward it so you're not staring at me all the time. The Battle of Culloden was fought on this moor, 16th April 1746. The graves of the gallant Highlanders who fought for Scotland and Prince Charlie are marked by the names of their clans. And there's the sign at the foot of this large, I guess you'd call it a cairn. Well, there we go. Now we know. It is a cairn. And it was put here in 1881. So from 1746 to 1881, my math is not that bad, but it's about, what, 135 years after the battle, the cairn was put up, and that's now 138 years ago. So that's a long time. In fact, the cairn's installation was closer to the date of the Battle of Culloden than it is to the date of today. So it's been here longer than you might think. I'm going to continue to circulate among these other stones. I won't be able to see them all. Here's Clan Fraser, and this is the one that probably gets a lot of attention because of Outlander. This is where the fictional Claire Fraser visited in one of her modern day journeys as she traveled back and forth through time. She came to this stone and made a remembrance for her husband, Jamie Fraser, who had died, or supposedly she had thought at the time he had died in the Battle of Culloden right here on these grounds. So those Outlander fans would probably be quite eager to see this one. But it's, with or without the TV show, it's pretty darn cool. The Culloden battlefield is a very impressive monument. It's quiet, it's reverent, There's just paths to walk around. There's an interpretive center inside here, and you can pay an admission fee, and apparently the movie and some of the guide is exceptional from what I read on reviews. But if you don't want to go through that and just want to explore it on your own, you can do that. That pathway behind me goes right out to the battlefield. There's no admission. So if you ever find yourself in the Inverness area, even if you don't have a lot of coin or a lot of time, you can do a nice walk in an hour to 2 hours around Culloden battlefield and see it for yourself. I highly recommend it. It's a very, very important monument in the history of the United Kingdom, but particularly in the history of Scotland, as it struggled, and sometimes still struggles, to be an independent country. The Scottish separatism movement is not dead, especially after Brexit. A lot of Scots are thinking, well, if the UK can leave Europe, then why can't we leave the UK? Because Scotland voted to stay with Europe, even while most of England did not. So it's not dead yet, folks, but Culloden is a monument to when things go wrong, and you can't settle things at a negotiating table. You have to settle it on the battlefield, and sometimes it turns out very badly. Well, after a great tour of the Culloden battlefield, we're back in Inverness, and you might wonder how Inverness got its name. It means something, obviously. The River Ness flows all the way through this town. It empties Loch Ness, which is just up there. You've heard of the Loch Ness Monster. Loch Ness is just up the way, and the River Ness comes down through, eventually ends up in the North Sea. Behind me is Inverness Castle, and as you can imagine from the surrounding river and the ability to control that river would be a very important military objective. Whoever is basically holding that castle is in charge of the river and in charge of probably quite a bit of real estate. Inverness is considered the gateway to the Highlands. Anywhere east of here is just more of, I guess what you would consider more mainland Scotland. But west and north of here are the Scottish Highlands, and Inverness is really the focal point, or the jumping off point, to go to the Scottish Highlands. This place is fantastic. It's full of all kinds of great shops. You can buy kilts, tartans, and all sorts of Scottish memorabilia, really original stuff, not made in China, but woven here locally from local products. There's sheep everywhere, so there's local wool. It's a wonderful spot. It's very picturesque. The weather today is not the greatest. It has relented a little bit. There's not as much rain now as there was earlier, so I'm able to get out and walk around a little bit without getting too soggy. But the day is coming to an end fairly soon, so I decided I'd take a walk downtown around the river. Tomorrow we board the train in the morning, we head for Aberdeen, so this is my only opportunity to actually see the real Inverness. The Culloden battlefield trip went from a bus terminal at a mall, at a shopping mall, which didn't really let me see much of the town. So I'm going to do a little walking around Inverness with the camera on and give you a little tour of this wonderful, small, but very important Scottish city.